Our natural behavior seems to be one of guardedness for our own well-being. We have a natural affinity for and aversion to certain things that allows for our survival, to do what's best for us as individuals. According to evolutionary psychology, we've evolved our thinking, emotions, and behavior for survival advantages and adaptive payoffs. For example, my son, I love him, but he gets angry and throws a fit when he feels personally threatened. Even if it's not a true threat to his survival, his body and emotions react as if it is. And it can really be fight or flight with him sometimes. You can beat it next time.
No, I can't! It's impossible! I literally just told you to not talk with him. Why do I wait? Yeah.
But it's just a natural overreaction based on primitive survival instinct. Suppressing these emotions seems to go against our natural programming, and that may even prove futile anyway. Speaking of emotions, I hate moving. But what about avoiding strong emotions altogether? Is it possible to be less reactive and emotional if we train ourselves to not be as attached to outcomes? It seems like much of spiritual practice is about this, to abstain from or renounce worldly possessions, relationships, and activities. But even more important than the outward detachment is the inner detachment, to be dispassionate and not as emotionally attached to desires. But is spiritual detachment unnatural? The only problem with strong reactive emotions is that they don't feel so good in the moment, and they can cause even further distress in relationships and circumstances after. I think we can all agree that we'd rather not feel that way if we could help it. But it seems like many of us become even more disgruntled and reactive as we get older. We find more to complain and to worry about as more and more conditions don't meet our requirements for being happy. And we would think a more unconditional happiness is natural to children. On average, they seem to be happier than adults. And when they do get upset, they get over it more quickly and more easily. I'm new to this area and I'm starting to explore it. It's pretty nice so far. Are children more aligned with their true nature? According to the non-dual teacher Rupert Spira, the nature of who we really are is inherently peaceful and happy. Many children do seem to be more joyous and easily able to recover when they're upset. But when things don't go their way, they're also prone to outbursts, reactivity, and tantrums. Is that more indicative of how they naturally are? Of what's natural to all of us? Maybe the balance of both sides coexisting is closer to the truth. But being attached to the outcomes of our lives motivates our actions, and expressing our emotions that are appropriate to any given situation has survival payoff in society. Even something as simple as enjoying a sip of water is motivated by these survival mechanisms. I would definitely feel miserable close to dehydration, and I'm supposed to feel that way. If someone were to try to steal the last remaining water needed to prevent my death, a show of anger and aggression would be warranted. We have evolutionary pressures to survive as individuals. Our so-called negative emotional reactions help with that survival. But so do our positive emotions, desires, and preferences. So would we still be motivated to survive if we're truly detached from our sense of self and possessions? Or is detachment incorrectly associated with spirituality? It seems like Rupert would not endorse detachment as a prerequisite. He would describe the goal of spirituality as a simple recognition of the nature of our being. And then after this ordinary, direct, and accessible realization, there's a process of realigning our thoughts and actions to be consistent with our true nature. That process may go on forever and never reach 100%. As Rupert says, we may never be free of the residues of old conditioning. But that change of mental conditioning is a big part of spirituality for many of us, focusing and purifying our minds to align with our spiritual understanding. Look at all this stuff I have. I got the big stuff set up, but I still have a bunch of boxes to unpack. And compared to a monk who renounces worldly possessions, this could all be evidence of my lack of spirituality and attachment to things. Rupert makes a distinction between the progressive path and a direct path. The progressive path may be what religious and spiritual practice was traditionally about, progressively training the mind to be less compulsive in thinking and divested of its emotional investment in external conditions and circumstances, abstaining from activities and letting go of desires that promote an egotistical sense of self and separation from others, an excessive craving for material possessions, and a reliance on sense pleasures for happiness would have been a big part of that process. Conversely, the direct path would be about readily and immediately realizing a transcendent reality of who we are, regardless of circumstances and conditions, no matter how pure our minds are or how we're feeling in the moment. Like the blank screen that's always pervading the movie while it plays. It's always there in the background of our varied experiences, always accessible. It doesn't take any training to realize it. We don't have to put on a new movie or shut off the movie altogether. But both paths may converge. Rupert has said that realizing our true nature may be half the process. The other half is turning back around again to face the outside, toward our thoughts and actions. After realizing our true nature, we may still have to engage in activity that reconditions our minds and bodies to be in alignment with our new understanding. In the week-long retreat I was recently in with him, Rupert did concede to a few of the questioners that it takes time for this reconditioning. It takes time to catch up to speed. Our ordinary and habitual ways of thinking and acting are so ingrained, they don't change overnight. Our minds may have to be immersed sufficiently and frequently enough to retain the feeling of fulfillment, peace, and love that we understand to be our true nature. And that no matter what happens, I am always I. Come here, Bubba. I want to read you something.
Okay.
I Am Always I by Rupert Spira. I am not always happy. Is that familiar to you? I don't always feel free. I'm not always lonely, but I am always me. I'm not always normal. Everything changes. So what can I be? I cannot be anything. But I am always me. What do you think? Tell me one line you remember from it.
I am always I.
All right, now you can go play. Video game time, come on.
Yeah.
So in the end, I would think that some middle way is possible. Inspired thoughts and actions in our relative reality of worldly pursuits, and the ability to take a broader spiritual perspective in the midst of distress and conflict. To pursue our outward goals and preferences while at the same time realizing our inner completeness and fulfillment. A felt understanding always accessible to us despite it all. Maybe that's the best we can ever do. To do what we're inspired to do from a place of spiritual understanding and to rest in this understanding when things get too tough. At least I take comfort in that compromise right now. Like and comment if this resonated with you, and subscribe below to follow me on my journey. See you next time.